G'day, ZiggyD here, back for my third and final Demon Hunter PvP 1v1 dueling theory crafting session. In the last two videos I talked about skills, I talked about offensive skills and utility skills, and then I closed out by talking about passive skills. But I also wanted to just mention a few things about gearing in PvP, and things that I think are going to be differing from PvE gearing, what's popular now, and what might be popular in PvP and why that might be useful. Now, some of this might be somewhat hopeful thinking, because I really hope that some more gear diversity comes out of PvP. I think it would be quite boring if we just take our PvE gear into the PvP 1v1 dueling and have it be effective. So I really hope some of my ideas here actually do turn out to be right, simply because it's going to make the game more interesting. So I'm not going to be covering every piece of gear and every piece of stat and things like that, because a lot of that's obvious and the same from PvE. Instead, I'm just going to cover a few core differences, and pretty much I only have three things to really talk about in this video. So the first one is attack speed. The thing about attack speed is that while it was originally popular in PvE and it was very strong, it was nerfed a bit and people sort of moved away from using it, instead focusing on crit chance, crit damage, especially builds like my Cinderstrafe build, which if I switch that back to my standard gear here, I'm very well kitted up for with hardly any attack speed, because that actually hampers my ability to keep up permastrafe. Now, while that attack speed is less popular in PvE, I think it's going to be very popular in PvP for the simple reason of mobility. When you are attacking with an ability like Devouring Arrow while trying to move, there's a much longer pause if you have lower attack speed, and you're able to kite less effectively and attack less while kiting. Now, however, if I switch out to a faster weapon like a hand crossbow and a quiver, or two hand crossbows, then it becomes much easier to move and attack at the same time. And that just gives you a lot more survivability and more damage output in PvP. And especially with homing abilities like Hungering Arrow, or stun abilities especially, the ability to put out more attacks per second while still being able to kite effectively is going to be very important in 1v1 situations, and probably even team PvP. So this means we might see a bit of a shift towards either two-handed bows like the Windforce with its knockback, which could be very interesting. I hope Windforce becomes popular in PvP. It'd be pretty cool to see some Demon Hunters rocking some Windforces again. And we also might see a shift towards one-handed crossbows. Now, the one-handed crossbow shift moves into something else that I'm pretty excited might possibly happen in PvP, and that I've been preparing for a little bit, and that's the rise of shields. Now, shields are pretty much useless in PvE. No one really picks up shields anymore, because no one really wants to buy shields anymore. Once you get to a certain point, it's all about farming speed. You can kill everything while surviving anyway. You just want to be able to kill faster and move faster and farm faster and get more gold and get more loot and things like that, and a shield really doesn't help with that. Now, I'm really hoping, this is probably the main thing of my hopeful thinking for PvP, that shields will become possibly good in PvP. So, and I'll share why I think that's going to be useful for the Demon Hunter especially. Now, the Demon Hunter can easily kite melee characters, and they have a lot of abilities to support that. However, ranged characters like versus a Demon Hunter, or versus maybe even a ranged Barb, or versus the Wizard especially, and maybe the Witch Doctor, I think having a shield is going to be very good, because it's pretty... While you can easily evade a melee character trying to hit you in melee range, it's pretty hard to evade a Devouring Arrow after it's homing after you. So I think a shield's going to become potentially pretty good in this situation. Now, especially with Devouring Arrow, if we see a lot of Demon Hunters using Devouring Arrow, the shield could be a really good counter to this. And what the shield allows you to do is either block the first hit, so as such all consecutive pierces will also be blocked, or maybe to block one of the pierces, so reduce that damage a lot. Now, the shield's also going to be very useful against stun attacks that proc stuns, because if you can block those, maybe even... Well, what have I got here? 26% chance to block. I can block 26% of all incoming stuns. Then that gives me a much better ability to get away from and keep myself safe and things like that. I also think that survivability in general is going to be more important in PvP than it is in PvE. A lot of people taking their PvE gear into PvP are pretty much just going to be glass cannons by the standards of PvP. At least that's sort of what I'm hoping actually happens. So when looking for PvP shields, the things that I think are going to be the most important are chance to block and the block amount. A lot of people neglect block amount, but that's also very important. Now, the eye level 63 shields are pretty much the best way to get this. They have the chance to block and the block amount. Storm shields are very popular for some of their other stats, but I don't think they're going to be so good in PvP, because they have a lower block amount and a lower block chance than these rare eye level 63 shields. So don't underestimate that block amount and really focus on that block chance for PvP if you're looking into getting some shields. The good thing about shields is they're incredibly cheap now, so again, do your own research before buying anything that I recommend here. Don't just assume because I mentioned something that it's actually going to be good in PvP. This is all just theory crafting, so maybe if you think shields could potentially be good in PvP, you could invest in some shields for your Demon Hunter now. So the last thing I want to talk about is things that synergize well with certain skills. So a skill that I've mentioned in this series of videos is Impale, especially with the impact, the stun from that. Now, the thing about Impale and gear synergy is that you can get gear that reduces the hatred cost of Impale, and you can actually get quite a bit that takes the hatred cost of Impale down to almost nothing and makes it incredibly spammable. So if you can get Stone of Jordan and a chest piece and things like that decrease the cost of Impale, then you're going to be able to put a lot more stuns out and just spam that without ever running your hatred. We could even see people stacking a lot of reduced hatred for Impale and using that as their main attack, which would be pretty cool. So I'm interested to see other synergies like that happen. There's other things like increased damage to evasive fire and lightning arrow synergies and things like that, which could also be good, but I think the Impale one's especially going to be good. So sort of keep an eye out that. Think about the skills you want to use in PvP, maybe some of the ones I've mentioned here, or if there's any other ones you think are good, and take a look at your gear and what you can what you can get out of synergy between your gear and your skills to increase those. And maybe if you can build something cool like an infinite Impale build and things like that in PvP, that could be really effective and would be a lot of fun to play around with. Now, just a final word, which I sort of mentioned with the shields, is I think survivability is going to be much more important in PvP than it is going to be in PvE. Now, I'm really not geared for survivability at the moment. With the shield on, I'm okay, a 30k life, and I have some resistances and armor and things like that. It's okay, but I think being able to increase that more, get more regen especially, I think regen's going to be very good in PvP because of the way that damage is likely to be scaled down. If we see a lot of scaling down of damage, then things like regen life per second is going to be increasing your survivability by quite a lot, especially if you're able to kite around and things like that. So just generally looking at building a gear set with gear synergies and good survivability while still being able to put out a bit of damage, I think will be a good way to gear for PvP. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully you guys have found this thought-provoking and give you some ideas about how you want to look at PvP in the future and maybe how you want to prepare for PvP. I know I'm very excited for 1v1 dueling and I hope you are too. That's it for today. I'm ZiggyD and thanks for watching. So let's begin our analysis with a brief overview of the games. Diablo 3, as its name suggests, is the third title in the popular franchise by developers Blizzard Entertainment. The Diablo series has a long history and a large base of hardcore fans who feel that the games have defined their genre, the loot-based action role-playing games.